right, we are back with another episode of Cinematic Suffering. This is episode 3. This is a very special episode because we were looking very much forward to reviewing and looking at this movie. These are complete lies. Of course, we were not looking forward to seeing this movie.
I felt an unnecessary amount of trepidation about this movie for some weird reason. I was worried that if I didn't like it, that I'd be somehow as considered xenophobic, which always a concern.
Right, yeah, or that we just didn't get it because of the cultural difference between the movies. But before we get into that, this is Cinematic Suffering, and this is a podcast where we are going through A through Z in Netflix horror, and we're watching every movie from A through Z, and we're not going to skip over anything. We don't take requests unless your request is in the queue. Like if you want us to watch, The Void, you're going to have to wait until we get to the V's to see this. So this is we have no choice on what we're going to watch. We have to watch everything A through Z in order.
Yes, otherwise it wouldn't be called Cinematic Suffering. It'd be called Cinematic Doing Whatever the Hell You Want.
Right, and we are doing this especially because we like to cause, we're very masochistic.
Yes.
Yes. So what movie are we looking at that we've been talking and building up?
Today is the 2008 film from India called 1920. It was directed by Vikram Bhatt, starring Rajneesh Duggal, Adah Sharma, and Raj Zuchi. And I hope I got those names, pronounced them correctly. So the cast is filled with supporting characters, but our three main characters that we're going to be focusing on is Arjun and Lisa. They're the romantic couple, and Father Thomas plays the helpful priest in this film.
Right. And I like. We should also go back and mention that I am Jason and you are.
I am Clay.
Yeah, so we're still getting this introduction thing down.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, eventually. So we have 1920 here. This is a movie that I don't know why it was called 1920 because I'm still trying to figure out why it's called 1920. It looks like it was it was called 1920, but looks like it was filmed in 1970, and it came out in 2008.
Yes, it's. Looking ahead in our alphabetical premise here, there are two Indian movies in a row, and both of them are named 1920. So that immediately got me thinking there's got to be something historically that I'm not aware of. So turns out 1920 was a pretty problematic time for a lot of Indians. The British were being poor house guests and just helping themselves to whatever they wanted. I think they wanted warm places to vacation and nice exotic meals to go out to. Bangers and mash wasn't doing it for the Brits anymore. So that's kind of the historical context that this movie is in.
Yeah, I guess you're right. This was a time, 1920 was a time of great upheaval, I guess, in the country of India. And
full land of India, yes.
Yeah, and the British colonies were eventually being relinquished to their native governments again, and I think this was around that time. But
yeah, and that definitely plays into the film. I didn't do a hell of a lot of research myself, but what I did look up on Wikipedia showed that that Gandhi guy had a whole thing about it. So it was.
I've heard of him.
Yes, I've heard of that guy. I think they based Yoda on him in the Star Wars movies, but yeah, that plays into the movie, which I was happy about, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But,
yeah, and this is again we loaded this up with some trepidation, and it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
It was long.
It was a long one, and I'm not familiar with Bollywood movies. And this was one I was just like, I was gonna dread it. And I said, I'm gonna break it up. I'll watch 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there, and then by the time we do this episode, I'll have finished up with it and eventually have everything that we need to do. But I found myself sitting through an entire hour before I had to go do other stuff, and it passed by relatively quickly. In fact, by the time I'd finished up the hour I'd kind of put into this, I kind of wanted to sit around and watch more.
Yeah, and I had a similar kind of experience with it, and my very limited exposure to Bollywood, if for lack of a better word, is when I go to the Indian restaurant to pick up some food, and whatever they're playing on TV usually has me transfixed, and I figured, okay, we're going to see that in relationship to a horror movie. I'd seen a Ring knockoff that came out of India, and I could tell that all the actors were just biting their bottom lips to prevent themselves from singing and dancing. You can tell it's just in their cultural DNA. I'm gonna have to break into song at some point.
And there are other knockoffs that come from India that are kind of take more popularized Western films and make it their own. And from what I've seen on YouTube, and they're not exactly the best well-made endeavors.
Indian Thriller comes to mind.
Yes, Indian Thriller is always a classic. I can also say that there is like an Indian Star Wars. There's an Indian Nightmare on Elm Street, I believe.
Really? Oh, oh God! I wish it was on the list. I hope it's on the list.
Yeah, we could go down and research that actually.
Yes. We'll look ahead. So anyway, let's jump into the plot of this thing. The movie begins with this approach that immediately reminded me of Gothic movies like and books like Dracula. Like that whole approach. You see a middle-aged architect, and he's going to this hotel with the intention of tearing it down, or I'm sorry, it's a mansion, and they're going to make it into a motel or hotel.
Yeah, and that's I got the same kind of visual clues. There's a cloudy atmosphere. There's foreboding. Kind of, the Wagoneer was cloaked, and you couldn't see his face. And this black carriage pulls up to this mansion, and the architect gets out and. Yeah, for some reason the caretaker of not the caretaker. I'm hard to place because there's a caretaker. His name is Bhatt.
Bhatt, yeah.
But I'm thinking of the guy who doesn't live there, but he kind of does all the financial stuff, but he doesn't actually own the mansion.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of side characters here, ancillary characters, and I didn't bother to kind of jot his name down to memory. There's the housekeeper. That was Bhatt?
Bhatt, yeah.
Bhatt, and then this other dude that was kind of like his boss, that used to be the guy that reported to the dude that owned it or something. I don't know. That's I tried to focus on our three lead characters.
Yeah, and I don't want to dig too much into the weeds here because it is a 2-hour film, and I don't think
there's a lot here.
Yeah, we don't want to go for a 2-hour podcast here, but
God,
I only bring it up just because. I always wonder. It's like there's this beautiful mansion here. It's multi-room. The square space is amazing. And I kept thinking, why do you want to tear down this mansion? If you want to start a hotel, just renovate it.
Right. Maybe split a couple rooms. You can. Why would you start from scratch? I kind of thought the same thing. Let's just ruin all of the historical significance of this building. This is a gorgeous building. You can tell it's been around forever. So, yeah. But that was the intention, that they're gonna tear it down. So this Bashi, I think his name is, the architect. I wrote it down somewhere, but sure. He is quickly dispatched. He's kind of like the pre-credits victim. It doesn't take long before the ghosts inside this mansion. This mansion exerts itself as being haunted pretty quickly, and it claims its first victim in our architect, and the first architect that we meet.
And that was something that again pleasantly surprised me, because they started off with a good stinger at the beginning. That's going to pull you in. You got you got something mysterious. You kind of get a gist of what the plot's going to be, but not the entire thing.
Yeah,
and it pulled me out. I was like, oh, cool. Granted, it was a cheesy death that happened. His leg gets stuck in the staircase for some reason.
Yeah, there's a rotten step, and his leg goes through it, and then this stained glass window explodes and showers him with shards of glass. So, and then the housekeeper comes and is horrified to find this guy dead on the stairwell. So that's how our movie starts.
Right, and this is actually the second time, from what is explained later. So this is the second architect to come into this house and die. And Bhatt, the housekeeper, caretaker, comes in there with his tea tray loaded up and sees the dead body and drops the tea tray. I was like, come on, Batuan, you were totally expecting that. Come on.
Yeah, come on, man. I'm sure that this is not the first haunting that you've seen in this Scooby-Doo ass house that you live in. Yeah, that's we cut from the murder, well, the whatever you call
House
it, the
murder.
ghost murder, the architect, and then we cut to our leading man, Arjan, which this is when you start to feel like you're creeping into the weird otherworldliness of an Indian movie. Our hero is this guy that's just, annoyingly handsome, shirtless, walking around this beautiful Indian landscape, eating coconut and just feeding it to ladies that he knows in the village. Is just shoving his coconut fingers into their mouth. I'm like, that must be a cultural thing too, because I would get arrested immediately for that thing.
There's and he's speaking I guess a Hindu prayer. I didn't read up too much on it, but he's speaking it very fast, and this movie was not dubbed in English, unfortunately.
No.
And the subtitles are flying by at a lightning speed. And I guess it didn't really matter, but I was trying to, because it seemed like a very interesting story of these gods. And
yeah, it was. I couldn't take in any of it. He was definitely reciting some kind of prayer. I guess in our context, it would be kind of like the Lord's Prayer or something like that. Right. It was some kind of mantra that he was speaking, but you get this nice little walk-in of him establishing him, and then you meet his fiance Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa is, wow, she is a beautiful woman. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah,
they definitely got some beautiful people to play the main characters in this movie.
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing with Bollywood features. I remember I was talking to this Indian guy that I knew one time, and I said, "Oh, my only frame of reference is what I see in the Indian restaurant, so I'm pretty ugly American about it." But I said, "Yeah, man, Indian women are beautiful," and he said, "Well, yeah, the beautiful ones are." And I was like, "Okay, well, the ones in the movies and on the videos are beautiful." And he was like, "Yeah, no shit." I'm like, "All right, I guess so much for cultural outreach." Dude,
Well, he has a point, because you rarely see ugly people in Western films as well. Yeah, and I'm trying to think, what was the first time we saw Lisa? Was it
wasn't she in Arjun's office? I remember them having some kind of conversation in the beginning of the movie. They're talking about eloping or something.
That's right. Yeah. So Lisa is the daughter of a British, I guess, soldier who had relations with her mother, who was a native Indian woman, and she was born out of it. And I think it basically just established her as a bastard, pretty much.
Yeah, that's an issue with the locals, and also I think she's a Christian or an atheist or something that doesn't jive with their local religion. So she's got two strikes against her when it comes to Arjan's family. So they set it up in very kind of soap opera-y terms that they're these two lovers that can't kind of get either family to agree to this union. So they're going to elope.
Yeah, and elope they do try to do, but when they drive off in what you think will be the sunset, their car is stopped in the middle of the road, and it turns out to be Arjun's father and uncle, plus a bunch of thugs waiting for them.
It looks like a whole bunch of yogis pile out of this old style car, clown style, and they've all got truncheons getting ready to beat his kidneys into paste over this union. It's his brother and his father are part of the gang.
Yeah, and this is the part I was starting to get a little bit confused on, because they just they pull him out of the car. She decides just to sit there while they douse it with gas and light it on fire.
They tie her. It's real quick. But they tie her wrists to the steering wheel, and then they set the car on fire. And you're just sitting there going, "Oh my god!" Can't you just take them off the Evite list for family dinners? Why do you got to burn her alive?
So they try to burn her alive, and Arjun, there's a fight scene almost immediately. Arjun's like not beating off these guys. That sounds weird, but he's fighting these gentlemen, and fists are punching and people are flying, and they try to get their hands on Arjun. And he tries to get these Lisa, and you can see her face. She's swooning back and forth.
About to burn up. An obvious dummy in the seat when he rescues her out of there. You can see it's like a store mannequin, which, of course, we don't want our actor to burn up, but...
No. And he rescues her, puts her against the wall, and then yells at his father and says, I reject your religion and I reject all religions, or whatever. Immediately turns into an atheist because of this.
Yeah. Because this religion is a big sticking point. This religion almost got my future wife, burnt to a crisp in front of my eyes. I'm done with your holy books.
Exactly, and they wanted him to have a higher caste wife, and in their what I assume is their caste, and even though that stuff technically wasn't supposed to be around in 1920, it still kind of exists even today. And then.
Yeah, you see a lot of social hierarchy in this movie.
Right. And so Arjun rejects that, and they eventually escape with their lives, and they go and elope.
Yep, they elope to to the haunted mansion that we're going to spend most of the rest of the movie in. They get in there. It's been established very early on that it's haunted, and we get this adorably cheesy moving in montage that was one step away from an 80s comedy. I expected them to be painting the walls and playfully, dabbing paint on each other's nose, feeding each other chocolate bonbons, just all of the 80s stereotypes. They have a fun moment there.
Yeah, and it was completely, it took about 5 minutes because they play every song that are over these video montages. I just started calling video montages because it had to be the entire song, not partial parts of it. I mean, you had to see them go, okay, we realize they're happy. Okay, 10 seconds in, I realize they're very happy together. But, 3 or 4 minutes later, you're still in this montage. And
they're just deliriously happy with one another. And that's what's funny about this movie, and I'm sure a lot of movies like it, is that if you came in during that scene, you'd think that you were just watching the Indian equivalent of MTV, because it's just this fully realized music video that's just been compartmentalized within this movie. It still fits into the context, but
yeah.
Debatable that we need to spend this much time with them palling around and painting the house.
Yeah, and I think that was a big problem with a majority of this movie, was there's a lot of padding. There's a lot of unnecessary things that were going on that we didn't really need to know about.
No, it doesn't advance the plot, and only serves to give us a song and dance number that is just head scratching to anyone that's not from there.
And it was, but I mean, not only that part that was coming up, but another part, where they really take us back to like 1857, and well, I mean, we'll get there when we get there, but it just starts going really off the rails.
Oh, it's you can hear the needle skidding across the record, but they're moved in, and things seem to be going more or less okay, and
we realize that Arjun is an architect. What a coincidence!
Yes, they took a while to get us there, but he is the third architect that's made an attempt to tear this place down and build up a hotel where it stood.
Right? Because
again, I don't get it.
Yeah, near the beginning, I think they mentioned that one architect had already been there and got killed, and then we saw the second architect get killed, and then they've invited a third architect.
This house has a history of just eating architects.
This house has a very, very big grudge. It's
doesn't want to get demolished, as most haunted houses are.
No, and you know what? And you know what? It's the house shouldn't blame the architect. The house should be blaming the financier that's always comes to the house. He doesn't stay there, but the house should say, okay, once this stupid financier comes back to the house, I'm going to fucking kill him.
Yes.
But the house doesn't do that, and I kept screaming at the house, do something.
kill the head and the body will fall. That dude keeps feeding you architects.
So we realize that Arjun is an architect, and he gets the amazing call that, hey, this mansion this guy owns a mansion, or is the financier or the backer of the mansion, says, hey, we'd like you to come and tear this mansion down and build an exotic hotel here.
Yes. So he immediately gets to work doing that, and we find, which fascinated me, we find our first probably more than our first, but we find a major horror movie cliche, and that's the locked, impenetrable door. He's like, I can't get into this damn door. And I immediately thought of 13 Cameras. Completely different movie, completely different culture, but they both have locked doors that we can't get in. I'm fascinated by this because I've never noticed this cliche before.
Yeah, and this might be something we'll be noticing throughout. So you should keep tally on how many movies have the locked door horror movie cliche in it.
Oh, I'm turning it into a drinking game.
This is a door that when they pull on the doorknob, the doors are very flimsy. You can see them, and they're going to tear it down anyways. You might just break in, but of course that doesn't happen.
Put your shoulder into it. Yeah, so that little MacGuffin is established pretty quick, and I think that is, if I'm getting the timing right, in that evening, I think that Lisa has some kind of dream, or she's just some waking dream where she just walks into that locked room unfettered. So we get a look inside the locked room almost immediately.
I don't think that happens. I mean, I know she wakes up in the middle of the night. She hears a creaking door. The door to her bedroom is creaking open, and she hears the cry of a man. Whoa! It's a melodic cry. Whoa! And she's drawn to it. She goes through a long, cool shot of a hallway with billowy white curtains, and a face or body kind of moves through the curtains. But as Lisa turns to see behind her, the face and body are gone. But she moves up the stairs towards the cries, and I kept thinking, careful of those steps, Lisa. I know they've just been replaced, but who knows? It's probably just that one that was cracked that was replaced. There's probably other rotten stuff.
The termites centered on that one step. That's the one that they needed to get at. But and I might be messing up the continuity here a little bit, but I believe she gets a peek inside that room, and the two main things that you see are a big painting of a beautiful Indian lady, in this pretty red dress kind of thing, like the very kind of, indicative of that time frame and of India. And there's a big piano, and she starts to play the piano.
Yeah, and I she wasn't playing that dun 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 dun. No, that was something else. That was later.
Dun 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 dun.
Because you remember there's a record player that she puts on or something, and it goes dun 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 dun. Every time that plays, I'm like, nobody's home. Nobody's home.
Oh yes, a blast from the past.
And I mentioned at the beginning, possibly this was made in 2008, and it looks like some of this was filmed with film, like a 35 millimeter, and other parts it looked like it was filmed with digital, because there are some HD camera shots, and then we get the graininess.
Yeah, it's real inconsistent. Like, I thought that I was having a stroke for a second, because it's like, oh wow,
yeah, there was blurry parts. And I don't know if this was a stylistic choice on the filmmakers. I just thought it was kind of odd. Maybe that was their style.
Yeah. Seems like in any context it was a mistake. That's kind of how I saw it.
So we realized that the woman in the painting you mentioned is Gayatri. And because the record player that I told you was like, nobody's home, she starts listening into the big sound thing, and you hear Lisa, and Lisa starts turning into Gayatri. So we realize that, Lisa realizes that the girl in the picture is this person named Gayatri.
Yes, and so she tells her husband, and this is one part of the movie that I really give it kudos for. When she tells Arjun that she had this spectral encounter, he doesn't condescendingly pat her head and say, you must have just been dreaming, or that kind of thing. He actually kind of listens to his wife, and I was like, oh wow, this is totally opposite of the norm of horror movies. At this point in any kind of horror movie that I'm used to, the husband is a total ass clown about it.
Yeah, disbelieving. He doesn't believe his crazy wife, or vice versa. The wife doesn't believe the husband, although that's rare.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
always the hysterical wife is this infuriating cliche that you get in most horror movies.
right, exactly, and I think that's indicative of the relationship between Arjun and Lisa throughout the entire film. There is no real conflict between them, other than Lisa wants to make sure that Arjun is happy.
Yeah, like their relationship was actually nice. Like it could have been overdone. It could have been, especially for a Bollywood movie like that, it could have been schmaltzy and just way too sugary. But no, they seem to have it together. They should get married. They've got a pretty
Yeah.
good union.
So Lisa takes a walk into the neighborhood and runs across the local priest of the local Catholic church.
Yes, Father Thomas.
So Father Thomas, they have a nice little conversation, and she mentions the house and wants him to come over and look at it or inspect it.
Debug it, really.
Yeah, debug it, get a feel for it. So the Father Thomas comes over the house. He throws down some holy water, and of course the holy water burns the floor. It's a cross.
Yeah, it bubbles in the shape of an inverted cross. So he knows that he's got a serious, he's got a problem that transcends termites in the walls. This place is eaten up with specters.
So Father Thomas, and I think during this time Arjun is out of town. He's doing business somewhere. They don't really explain where he goes to, and so it's really just Lisa at the house by herself with the weird Bhatt, who kind of gives some background too about the house. Not that much. He doesn't give up too much.
Yeah,
And,
he's not coughing up too much because he's complicit in all these dead architects.
right, exactly. And so the priest goes back and talks to another priest. So into this other priest who kind of looks like Raul Julia's slow cousin. I swear he looked like Raul Julia, but there's just some features that were a little bit off, and I was like, oh, poor Raul Julia. Too bad that last Street Fighter film he was in.
Yeah,
It's a mess.
it's a shame to go out on Street Fighter as as Bison.
Yeah,
He
that.
like him. That was funny. He looked more Hispanic than Indian to me.
And so they discuss about doing a possible exorcism. The other priest says, "Oh, well, you're gonna have to get approval from this person and this person. You have to get proof." And that's
Mired in the bureaucracy of the are they Catholics?
that's what I'm assuming, that they're Catholics, or at least a branch of the Catholics, maybe Jesuits or something.
It's a weird thing to fixate on, but his collar, the little white part of his collar, was way too wide. Like
I saw that too. Yes, I fixated on that damn thing the entire goddamn time. Every time I saw.
He shoved a whole napkin in his neckline there.
I'm trying to remember when. So, did both priests go to the house, right?
They go to the house and they see one of my many favorite parts in the movie. They see a bloody goat's head painted on the wall, and it looks like something out of like a 1990s black metal album. Like I thought, like, okay, either this place is infested with demons, or you've got a bunch of black metal guys in corpse paint living in the drywall. You need to exterminate these cats. They're having band practice in there. You're never gonna be free of symphonic death metal.
So yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool part. The goat was not the average looking goat you would see, like the goat of Mendez or whatever. That's the inverted satanic one. It's like this
No,
cool
he had
looking
big floppy ears.
Yeah.
Instead of the horns. Yeah, it was neat. It was another neat kind of like cultural difference. So you could still tell it was evil, but.
And then around the 1 hour and 5 mark, Arjun goes out with, I guess, the financier of the house to talk with him, and they invite him out for a good time with the other architects or whoever. And
those architects are always partying.
Yeah, and this looked like a raging party that was starting up, and this is where we get our musical number that I thought was going to be avoided in the whole entire film. Up to this point, I was like, oh, this is, they're taking things kind of seriously, but other than the kind of cheesy montage videos. But nope, we get a full-fledged music, singing, and dancing number, and it was fascinating. It just
it just manifests itself out of the woodwork. We have pretty girls with like their bare midriffs doing belly dancing moves, and we get a full number. We get a full video. I didn't time it, but it had to have been about a 3-minute song. Just a typical kind of song that you hear when you go and get Indian takeout. It was that video. Like if you walked in on it at that moment, it'd be like, all right, I'm just watching Indian MTV.
Yeah, it was, and this is where I thought there was going to be like a point of contention in the film, because I thought, oh, it looked like the Indian lead vocalist, the woman who was, the obvious lead of that song and dance number, was going to try to seduce Arjun. That's what
the Chiquita lady, and
yeah,
the Chiquita banana lady,
and she was coming up, and dancing sexily near him, and I thought, oh, is she going to tempt him to cheating, and we're going to see like maybe Arjun fucks up and sleeps, but no, pretty much near the end of the song, he just gets up and leaves.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that's nice. He's like, I guess Lisa probably breaks that man in half. He's like, I'm not going to fuck this up. I'm going to go home and she's going to milk me like a goat. It's going to be good.
And Lisa is at home by herself yet again, and she is assaulted by the entity that resides in the house. And I thought this was kind of a cool effect. The sheets are pulled off her bed. She's kind of pinned to the bed, and you see around her throat handprints choking her.
Yeah,
and I thought, wow, this is really cool how they did this effect.
It was impactful. Like this specter that we can't see just drags her down the hallway by her feet into that same room that had been previously locked.
Yeah.
And then the doors just closed. So it was, in a way, it was almost a more disturbing kind of violation than even, like the Evil Dead movies. In a way, like those were obvious. You got a vine and it's going someplace that would be very uncomfortable. But this, it was like, it's just, you can tell that the theme of violation, the same thing that this movie is obviously a take on The Exorcism. It was a very different movie, but that scene had a very kind of violating quality to it.
It did. It reminded me of The Exorcist. It reminded me of The Entity with Barbara Hershey.
It's been years since I've seen that one.
Yeah, and that's the movie where this poltergeist was haunting her house and sexually assaulted her, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like, too. It's like we didn't see any of that in this movie, but you kind of got the impression that's what was going on. This time, Arjun comes back, and I'm trying to think of the timeline here. Now we know that Lisa is possessed because he gets home, and is she running around the mansion now?
Well, she's having herself a snack was the first thing I remembered. It doesn't take long before you realize that there's a real problem. She's found a raccoon or something, and it would have been nice if they established whatever creature that she's eating, but I think she just went up in the attic and took care of whatever was scratching around up there. You see this big fluffy raccoon tail, and she's just devouring it. It reminded me, have you ever seen the movie Jennifer by Argento?
Yes, I did, yes.
Yeah, it reminded me of that when the pretty girl messily devouring an animal alive.
Right, that was off of Masters of Horror, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, that was another one of those weird scenes because Arjun does come home. He doesn't see Lisa in bed, and he walks around the mansion and sees her there gnawing on a raccoon carcass at the bottom of the staircase. And up to this point, we had no idea that vermin or any kind of animals could get into the house.
She's filling up on trash pan. I'm surprised he didn't say, if you were hungry, there's naan in the fridge.
And didn't you mention that it's like she could be part of some kind of new exterminator service?
Yeah, because we had no end of raccoon problems in our house, and I was thinking, let's just get Lisa and release her into our attic, and she'll just devour the things. I could save thousands of dollars on exterminator fees.
Why do we have to save her? It looks like she's doing a great job being possessed. She's got a job now.
I know. We need to figure out what to do about the Lisa problem now that the raccoons have been thwarted.
That's true. Arjun realizes something's deeply wrong with his wife at this point. And he calls the doctor, right?
He calls I think Father Thomas and the doctor kind of converged at about the same time, and we get this classic faith versus medicine argument. She needs antibiotics. No, she needs exorcism. She needs ibuprofen. She needs the power of Jesus.
And Arjun's looking at this like a tennis match.
I just want whatever's in my wife out of my wife. Let's.
I think that's the impression I got too. That Arjun felt like, oh yeah, I want whatever's in my wife to get out of my wife, and and he was an atheist. He didn't believe in any kind of, religion at that point, so he was going to naturally go with the doctor on this one. But I did like the argument between both of them, even though it wasn't really too profound or philosophical. That
No, and I liked Father Tom. I liked the Father Thomas character. The priest character in a movie like this could easily fall into the tired archetype of screaming lunacy, where why won't you people listen? But his approach to this was kind of practical. Like, look, man, I mean, I know you don't want to hear it, but we got a serious Satan problem in this house.
Yeah, and I think they thought at the time she was just experiencing split personality or something was going on. So the
ibuprofen is all.
they bring Lisa to the hospital. She's in there, and Arjun visits her. And while Arjun's out of the room, she starts screaming and vibrating on the bed. And the entity lifts her up off the bed and does this crazy backward arch for her. And the doctor rushes in and says, "Get an injection," but doesn't really specify what that injection. I was like, "What, an injection of what? B12?" And they just bring this syringe back loaded with whatever concoction in there and try to jam it into her veins.
Well, there's some B12 in it, but it's mostly black tar heroin.
And I don't think they even got to inject her with anything. I guess it doesn't matter because the doctor rushes in there and they're trying to get all that stuff, and Lisa just tells everyone that the doctor has molested his patients while they slept or something.
Yeah, it's a typical exorcist moment where the entity that's inside her knows all your dirty secrets, and she lets something spill of him being naughty in some kind of way. I can't remember what his awful lascivious act is.
Right, so exposes him as some kind of pervert, and he just goes away after this point. Arjun steps out of the hospital at this point, and after the possessed wife incident, and into pretty much another music video of him looking at the trees, walking around,
just thinking about times gone by. It's just, and this is about the moment when I'm knitting a noose. I'm doing a nice cable stitch noose for myself, although all this music video is going on.
I think I actually did get up and use the bathroom and fix a sandwich at this point because I come back and of course he's still doing the same thing, just walking around while this music is playing. So we realize that Arjun finally realizes he needs Father Thomas, and he goes and approaches Thomas about doing what he needs to do.
Yes, and he gets, and I'm a little bit murky. This movie just throws so much plot at you constantly. I can't remember the exact timeline here, but I believe Arjun gets his next, the next piece of exposition is that he needs to go and talk to this lady that used to live in the mansion.
Right, because we have we also have established that now that we have a countdown. There's a time limit on this exorcism because the demon has told them that they have 4 days, and the demon's going to take the girl's spirit after the 4th day. So now we have a little more urgency to getting rid of this demon.
It was a heavy-handed way to kind of give them a timeline. It reminded me of the unnecessary clock in a video game. Like, why is this timed? Like, why do I have to beat all these guys in a certain amount of time? But yeah, I don't know why it was 4 days. They didn't give us any other clues. There was no solar eclipse. There was no full moon. I don't know why it was 4 days.
Yeah, there was after it was established 4 days. There's no real countdown. There was no. I mean, I knew they put it in there to give it kind of a sense of urgency, but there was no sense of urgency after that.
Yeah, they never said day 1, day 2, right. like you'd expect. So and a lot of unexpected things happen.
I think I don't know if during this moment that we find that Arjun goes and realizes that he needs to go find this other woman who lived in the house for 30 plus years.
Yeah, because she'll have some kind of they hurl exposition at you. They throw it at your head like rotten grapefruit. Take that.
I said I'm smearing rotten grapefruit off my face. They flash to the lady that Arjun needs to talk to, and we get a flashback, and flashback. Oh my
God! It's just this flashback turns out to be necessary to the plot, but it was just it derailed the movie so bad. Like Arjun, long story short, Arjun goes and talks to this lady, and she used to live in this place many years ago, and it was her and her two daughters, I believe, like big
No,
sister, little sister.
she was young at the time, so it was like like her older sister and the mother, or the house mother, at least the nanny.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
their grandmother, I should say. Yeah.
And all the men were off at war. The men were off at war fighting for independence from the British.
Right,
That
and
was
this is
kind of the context of this backstory.
yeah, this is during an uprising in 1857 in India against the British colonials.
So you got these three ladies in the mansion that we spent most of the movie in the past, and is a bit it was a bit distracting for me because like I realized that okay, this you realize real quick that this is the lady in the painting in the study with the piano. This is her portrait, so now we get to see her. It's her
Right.
backstory. And but oh my god, it just I had to fight to pay attention to this because I
Yeah.
wanted to get back to what's going on with Arjun and Lisa's possessed. Lisa's possessed in the past. We're going to leave that for a minute and go to this other thing that I didn't find nearly as interesting.
Yeah, I agree that once we got shifted back in the past, and I didn't realize how long this flashback was going to be. I thought it was just going to be a quick, aside on what was kind of going on, how it got there, and I didn't realize it was going to be like it felt like about 20 minutes.
Oh God, it felt like a small movie shoehorned in the middle of this movie. It's a turducken of a movie.
This could have easily been a prequel to 1920.
Yeah,
Called 1857. 1920, colon, 1857.
Minus whatever. I'm terrible at math, but you do the math. But the long story short of the backstory here is that you had these three ladies living in this house, and this wounded soldier shows up, just like limping out of the woods. He'd been out fighting the British and got wounded, and they nursed him back to health.
Yeah, and he's crying in anguish upstairs because that's where they take him. And that's where we establish, that's why the architect at the beginning heard this cries of anguish. That's why we heard Lisa, that's why we saw Lisa going upstairs when she heard the cries of anguish, because that's where the surgery or his health was being restored, was up there.
Yeah, they were yanking a musket ball out of his soft tissue, I suppose.
Yeah. So we realized that, this isn't Lisa, of course. This is Gayatra, who is the older of the daughters in this movie, because I'm trying to think. What was I was trying to think. That wasn't the same actress who was playing Lisa, though, right?
It was not. No,
It was
it's
not,
somebody
okay.
else.
The Hindu soldier, he was, good looking as well, but obviously wearing a wig.
Yeah, a curly wig. Yeah, it looked like a Party City wig.
And it would change pretty much in every scene. It would be dry or wet or hanging awkwardly off of his head.
Well, we quickly learn that he is a traitor. They find some evidence that I think the matriarch of the household at the time finds some evidence that he's a traitor. He sold out the Indian government to the British, and then we cut away and we know that something bad has happened to her. She goes invisible.
So yeah, it was established that there's a messenger came to the door, said that a company had been wiped out of Indian soldiers and by the British, and it was like a total slaughter, and it was attributed that this traitor was the one that sold out his company for some kind of favor with the British.
Yeah, and the two girls realize this pretty quick. They find the body of the old lady, and big sister tells little sister, "You got to take this evidence." They find some magical evidence of this guy walks around with his evidence of his treason in written form.
Yeah, you think you just like after you read it, you just kind of crunch it up and shove it in your mouth and eat it after.
Burn it or something.
Burn it or something.
The youngest girl goes running off with the letter to go to the authorities, while the older girl stays back to seduce the traitor and to keep him there at the house, because they need to keep him in that spot so that he can be brought to justice with the people that are on their way back.
Oh, you know what? And it backfired on her too, because apparently they rejected her from that. She was like, she had to leave the house. She was no longer part of that society because she had relations with this traitor.
It's like you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. That's the welcome she got.
Yeah.
And
So
she, yeah.
and another thing that made me laugh is they hang him right there in the living room from the rafters. It's like, take him out. There's a perfectly good hanging tree outside. You're gonna fuck up my floors. I've been waxing these floors always.
You know how hard it is to wax these floors? It's fucking 1857. You know, we don't have machines to do this.
No, I've got it takes a lot of elbow grease, and it's gonna.
So they hang this guy, this traitor, and well, this turns out to be the demon entity in the house. So this is where it kind of gets confusing too, because is it him or is it the devil?
That is confusing because they speak about him as if he is the devil. They say words like demon and Satan and that kind of thing, but it's the dude. It's the traitor dude. Turns out to be the malevolent spirit that's infested the house. As he's getting hung, he swears that he will never leave this house in spirit. I will always be here in spirit.
Yeah. And then just the entire time, everyone just addresses him as a demon or something. I guess, if you make some kind of oath like that right before you die, then you'd become some kind of unearthly, horrific, hellish beast monster.
That's allowed to possess people. It seems like you're skipping some steps. It seems like there's some demons with more seniority that should do that job.
Yeah, there's probably a couple down in hell going, you know what? This is fucking bullshit.
This is fucking bullshit. I spent all those weekends putting in overtime, and then this asshole just gets hung. He's a traitor, too.
So we flash back again to present day, 1920. And
just mercifully, we get back to Arjun and possess Lisa and Father Thomas.
Right, and Father Thomas does not have the sanction of the church because of all these things, so he just goes and does this on his own, as is per the usual plot points of an Exorcist film, right?
Yes, you see, he does not get the backing of the church, so much like, Bill O'Reilly in that classic meltdown that he had. He's like, fuck it, we'll do it live.
Fuck it, I'll do it live.
Bring me my vestments, we're doing this.
And that's what he pretty much does. And so he and Arjun, and I think Belmont kind of hangs in the back. We learned that Belmont is taking money from the financier to keep quiet about all the deaths in the house, and
just unnecessary plot. This thing is bloated with plot.
Right, and he tells Arjun that, and it doesn't really make any impact on the story. Arjun kind of blows it off anyways, and why
are you telling me this shit? I don't care.
You're telling me this now. Okay, whatever. And I've got more pressing issues.
I'll get to you. You're fired after we get this demon out of my betrothed.
So they try to tie Lisa to the bed so they can start this exorcism, but I'm watching them tie her with silk scarves so lightly.
It's like they don't even tie him in the knot. You know what they reminded me of? They remind me of the abracadabra things that magicians pull out of their sleeves, like this.
Yes.
These colorful ribbons, and of course she gets free immediately, and I was laughing so hard. She scampers down the hallway all possessed and bug-eyed. She looks like she's tripping nuts. She looks like she's just candy flipping or something. She's not possessed. She's just ate the whole bag of mushrooms. I said, have a cap, and it's hilarious. She scampers down the hallway all cackling and evil, and she's just adorable. She's not scary at all.
She's adorable evil. That's what it is.
Yeah, she's just too cute to be evil. And the three dudes just watch her go. They just stand there. These hapless idiots just watch her leave.
They watch her run down the hallway, and then they decide to chase her separately.
Let's split up.
Let's split up. But we just saw her run this way. Well, let's split up anyways. So.
The mansion is just a Byzantine labyrinth. We'll never find her. We need to split up.
That's another thing. We don't see much of this mansion. It's huge on the outside, but we only see the inside. There are only a couple of scenes inside within a specific, like the bedroom, the staircase, and the hallway.
Seemed like a bastard delight.
Yeah. There was so I think Belmont, our intrepid caretaker, goes off in search of Lisa and
buys the farm,
and we cry and we mourn his loss. He was an integral character to this film.
Yes, he was very important as this lower. He lived his life in a lower caste, and that's where he died. He was born a housekeeper, and he died one.
And how did he die exactly?
It happened off camera. I think
Oh.
she twisted him around like a pretzel or something. He seemed all rictusy and bent back on himself, I recall.
Right. So that happens. So Belmont is out of the picture, and then we see the Father Thomas searching for, and several ghostly things happen, like his vestments get ripped off his shoulder, or
he comes up to a mirror and he's waving at it, but he sees the back of his own head. The mirror is facing the wrong way, in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it looked a little bit bad. It looked real green screeny.
Yeah, but we got the idea. There was some otherworldly shit happening, and I think Lisa or the demon, or he gets grabbed and pulled into this dark room.
And he gets Arjun meets up with him, and the guy is run through with a yet another unestablished weapon. I'm realizing that, like, it always annoys me in horror movies and movies in general when they over-establish the weapon that's going to kill somebody later. Like, look at the turkey baster. Look at it. Look at it. But they should have showed somebody poking the fire with the fire poker that ended up getting shoved into Father Thomas's chest and out the back. And another hilarious, inadvertently hilarious part of the movie, Arjun's like, he's like, no, my son, don't pull it out. It'll literally be a blood fountain. Just leave it in. Like, okay. And Arjun hands him his vestments. Like, here's your purple robe. That should, I don't know. I'm out. And then just takes off and leaves Father Thomas to choke on his own viscera.
It was a beautiful, heartwarming moment, and I was visually taken by it. I think,
I would miss Father Thomas, oddly.
I thought Father Thomas was certainly a goner, being run through with a poker like that, but he seemed to be still kicking very well.
Yeah, he just needed to take a knee.
Just get a couple of breaths in and join me in the bedroom later.
I'm gonna try to pray away this sucking chest wound.
So obviously the Catholic faith has done nothing for the exorcism here, and Arjun chases Lisa around. Lisa and him have a fight, and it's a pretty brutal fucking fight, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, like he's doing war with her. We learn that she's got telekinetic abilities that we haven't seen before. She just holds her hand out, and a butter and some kind of cheese knife just kind of flies across the room, and she grabs it and cuts her own wrist a bunch of times. And then,
yeah, that was
say she, the guy that's possessed to her.
Yeah, the entity is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was a pretty brutal part, to tell you, just because the sound effect they had of her just hitting her wrist with this knife, and I was like, oh, okay. That was pretty intense.
And, to give him credit, you actually could kind of feel for Arjun in that moment. Like, oh, my God, this Lisa's hurting herself, but it's not really Lisa, and he's carving up my wife right in front of me, and she stabs him and stabs herself somewhere in the belly or something. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, and she just kind of drifts around, laughing it off, and ha ha ha, and then she's throwing Arjun around like some kind of rag doll, and he's against walls and across the floor, and he's lying there on the floor and just barely conscious, and she starts climbing up the walls by herself and mocking him and taunting him and saying, "Oh, I'm taking her with me. You're too late. Where's your love now?"
Yeah, Dead by Dawn. Oh,
Dead by
Dawn.
Different movie. And Arjun, during this moment, starts having flashbacks of... There's an early part of the film where he goes back to the temple where he used to pray to his Hindu god, and you see him kind of like stepping up onto the altar, like he was going to step into the altar to worship, but we don't... The only thing we see is him stepping back, and then that scene cuts. So we go back to that scene yet again with this part while he's lying on the floor, and he's remembering him stepping up onto the altar, and you see him step back, but instead of him leaving as we thought he did during the cutscene, he gets down on his knees and starts praying to the
it was a conflict of faith, I guess. That's kind of how I took it. That he's like a lapse of faith, and then we realized that the little mantra that he was saying in the beginning of the movie had significance, and he starts babbling that same babbling's probably disrespectful, but he starts reciting this whatever incantation, prayer,
Yeah,
whatever
like
you
like the
call it.
Lord's Prayer, like you said at the beginning. It's what.
Yeah. It seems like that. It was. I'd like to be able to kind of get a transcription of that, because some of the words were pretty interesting that he was saying.
Yeah, and I thought this was a really cool part of the film to me, and I did get some kind of a little bit of goosebumps during it, because she's slamming the shit out of him. She's like, he's not just saying these words and she's screaming. He's like, this is a physical altercation he's having with her.
Yeah, he actually kind of tackles her. He gets her in a bear hug, and he's quoting this incantation in her ear, and she's levitating him around and smashing him into walls. It was cool.
Yeah, I really liked this Hindu exorcism, I guess I was calling it at the end, because where the Catholic faith had failed, his faith, restored again, was defeating the demon.
Yeah, it was this, and you realize, like, oh my God, and it was wild for me, because I remember going into it like, I wonder if there's two movies in a row that we're going to review. Both have 1920. Both are Indian, as we talked about. So it's like, I was thinking this is going to have something to do with the theme of colonization. I wonder if the exorcism and the possession has something to do with, kind of an allegory for these invaders, these colonizers. And that kind of was a theme in this. Like, that came up a couple times.
Yeah, it was that was a great theme throughout the film, was the colonization and the I mean, I don't think they went too much into the atrocities that the British committed, but they kind of alluded to some of them. There was also the religious, because we're basically at the end here. Arjun defeats the spirit. Lisa returns to him, and
she vomits up the entity in this and barfs up blue confetti.
Yeah. So this blue confetti weird monster, or the demon, or the traitor, whatever you want to call him, comes out, and you see him. This cheesy graphic effect of him, rah, like that, and
he exploded,
and he explodes into a blue confetti cloud that left a great scent of pine in the background, I guess. But
anytime you void your bowels and or this demon, I guess you get some potpourri or something.
And that's pretty much how the movie ends. I think it does a couple of exit scenes where it obviously shows them as having a better life, and being happily married and living along.
We end on them taking the painting of the lady
Gayacha,
and they're taking this painting and they're putting it on a cart and wheeling it away. And Carrie brought this up. It was funny. They show a real close up of it, and she said, "That's not a painting. They just ran the Photoshop filter over a photo."
Over a photo.
And we'd never know that if they hadn't gotten the camera real close.
I didn't even know that at all. I didn't notice that. I have to go back and check out that scene. But I'd imagine that's probably what happened.
Yeah, it's one of the many annoying things that graphic designers look for. Don't ever watch a movie with a graphic designer or your video film friends. They'll drive you crazy. That was a terrible cut, and I hate that font. Like, shut up. There were some themes and some ideas in this that were a lot more ambitious than I gave the film credit for before I got into it. It wasn't it was more lofty than I thought it would be. I went into it thinking that it was just going to be a bad Exorcist ripoff, but there was more to it than that.
Yeah, there was a lot more to it, and at the end of 13 Cameras and at the end of 13 Demons, we have our recommendations on if we should, anyone should see this.
I enjoyed seeing it. I don't know many people that I could in good faith kind of recommend it to, because I would get annoyed hearing them be like, "Why'd you tell me to watch that thing?" But I liked it. I enjoyed watching it. I think it's one of the better movies that we've watched so far. Granted, this is only the third one, but it was, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was well made, and they had some great ideas. There was some bloated overhandedness with the plot, and a lot of exposition, a lot of padding that could have been trimmed. But overall,
they could have taken a cleaver to it in the editing room and cut out. They could have easily cut 20 minutes out of this thing, and it would have been a little bit better. But I think that American audiences have a real short attention span in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's how I was. That's how I was going into this. I was like, "Am I going to have the attention span to pay attention? The attention span to pay attention to? Am I going to have the attention span to get through this movie?" And I found, like I said at the beginning of the episode here, an hour in, I was like, I could keep going and watching this. But
Yeah.
at the time, I was like, I had other stuff I needed to do. So, but I quickly came back to it the next day. This like the first thing I did once I got home from work. I was like, I'm going to finish this movie. And
Yeah. The backstory I felt was a little bit of a distraction. I thought that the movie lost a bit of momentum in there, and like we mentioned, the song and dance numbers.
Yeah.
I think that Indian directors are just compelled again beyond their will to have song and dance numbers. I don't can avoid it. It's like cultural Tourette's or something. Like, I gotta sing and dance.
Okay, well, I guess that's it for 1920, and our next film is
1920 London.
1920 London.
Yeah, and I haven't researched this, but something tells me that the success, because this was actually a pretty successful movie. 1920 spawned a sequel. It was within its demographic. It was pretty well received, I found out. 1920 London is 1920 is kind of the rip-off of The Exorcist. 1920 London seems like a rip-off of Evil Dead. So
Oh, okay, cool. I will be anxious to see 1920 London, and there's also another installment called 1920 Evil Returns, which was released in 2016. So it seems
mixed reviews. The reviews were a little bit more mixed than 1920 from what I've heard.
Okay. I'm looking on YouTube here, and there's a movie called 1921, and it's an Indian film.
Something tells me the entire decade of the 20s was pretty well established in these movies. I think that something tells me that the success of one kind of leads to another.
Okay, well, I guess that's it for now. Did you have anything you want to plug?
Check out my online comic. I'm a cartoonist. I do a comic book with my brother called The H Boys. It's www.hboyz.com.
Yeah, and check out Cinematic Suffering on Twitter. It is cinematic. It's at Cinematic Suffer because we couldn't get the ring part. It was too long, I guess. So it's Cinematic Suffer on Twitter. We're on Facebook, of course, SoundCloud, and I am going to get these onto iTunes and other platforms as well, so people can have better and bigger access to these things instead of having it going straight to SoundCloud, because I know it can be annoying for some people to go there.
The link is kind of long, but onward and upward.
Onward and upward. Okay, so next week will be 1920 London. I can't wait to see this.
Oh goodness, yeah, it's gonna be. I think it's gonna. All the things we were worried about are gonna be realized with this movie. It was just a distraction to get to the meat and potatoes.
Okay, well, that is it, and thank you everyone for listening to Cinematic Suffering. Thanks to all the new likes on Facebook, and I'm Jason.
I'm Clay.
And we'll talk to you next week.
See y'all.
Bye.